Beyond the Mic with Sean Dillon.
We're joined on the Starline by a radio journalist, best-selling author, speaker, and former opera singer. Her latest project is a podcast on a 50-year-old cold case investigating the deaths of 6 young women around the D.C. freeways. It's called Freeway Phantom, and we welcome host Celeste Headlee.
Hello there. Thanks for having me.
Celeste, let's go beyond the mic. Carol Spinks, Darlenia Johnson, Brenda Crockett, Nenomoshia Yates, Brenda Woodard, and Diane Williams were murdered and discarded along D.C. highways in the early 70s. How did you find this forgotten sad case? Why was it the story you needed to tell?
So I actually didn't find it. It was the production company from Tenderfoot TV that found it. But I was fascinated from the very beginning because, first of all, I'd never heard of this person. And I live just outside of D.C. And yet had you ever heard of the Freeway Phantom before you saw this pitch? Yeah. This is somebody who took the lives of at least 6 young Black girls. And we've never heard of him despite all the attention that is often paid to serial killers. The other thing is that as you start to look into it, the heartbreaking stories of these young girls whose lives were cut short, the youngest was only 10 years old, is that the reasons why these murders were never solved, the many, many various reasons, some of those are still with us today, preventing us from keeping children and girls especially safe. And so it just made it a very relevant story, despite the fact that it happened so long ago.
How did D.C. Police Detective Romaine Jenkins help you and your team on this journey?
So she was really crucial to this. Romaine has never given up hope that these cases can be solved. And so therefore, not only did she personally reopen the case while she was still with the Metropolitan Police, but now that she's retired, she has gone to the various law enforcement agencies and collected all of the evidence, boxes upon boxes of evidence that is in her house. And we went to her house and sifted through a lot of these boxes of evidence from the original investigations of these cases. She's been pivotal. Her voice has been incredible. In some cases, she helped to connect us to some of the families so we could interview them as well. You know, she is still holding out hope, as do we, that these can be solved.
What's the one fact you've seen from this case that amazes you to this very day?
I think, you know what? One of the biggest facts that amazes me is how long it took them to realize this was the same killer.
Really?
There were 4 girls killed before they said, oh, this is the same guy. Despite the fact that all of these girls were very similar in appearance, all of them were young, slight, in other words, slim, short in stature, and all killed within the very same area of DC, all of their bodies left by the side of the road. And yet several girls were killed before they connected them together. That's shocking to me. And it can't help but be painful, too, because if they had done that earlier, they might have been able to keep the other girls safe.
Celeste Headlee from Freeway Phantom joins us beyond the mic for The Rocky Nate. All this is, Celeste, is 8 random questions to answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. There's no pressure.
Okay.
You said after the pandemic that you felt working 5 days a week was inappropriate. Have you stuck to your Wednesdays off? And if so, what did you do last Wednesday?
I have stuck to my Wednesdays off. And yesterday I worked on my miniatures. I've taken up the hobby of making miniatures, and I walked my dog for like 2.5 hours. I also pulled some weeds in my pepper plants. So that was the most of what I did.
How many friends would you trust with your life? More or less than 10?
Less than 10, more than 5. Probably 6.
Favorite piece of singing you like singing as a comprimario?
My favorite piece of music is from Donizetti's, the aria from Donizetti's Romeo e Giulietta. It's Juliet being very sad, but it's not because I like the lyrics so much as it just feels really nice in my voice.
Celeste, if you could read minds, who would you read first?
If I'm in a dark mood, I might read the mind of somebody like Mitch McConnell to try to figure out what's going on in there. If I'm in a lighter mood, I would probably read the mind of like one of my favorite authors, or maybe like Alexander Petrie, who writes columns for the Washington Post, and I find them hilarious.
What's the best trait that you got from each of your parents?
From my mother, an analytical mind, especially when going through research. From my dad, a sense of humor.
What's the best topping you put on pancakes or waffles?
I make homemade maple butter.
That's different.
Yes, I do. When my heavy cream is about to go to its expiring date, I have this little tiny handheld churner, and I churn it, and then churn it up with some maple syrup, and it is delicious.
You have posted incredible paw pal stories between your dogs. What's the love of a dog, especially Samus and Chaco, mean to you?
The love, I mean, it means everything. I mean, dogs are better than people, right? I mean, they're just better. They're better people than we are. And, she reminds me all the time it's so easy to make her happy. She is so incredibly happy by the smallest things. She's constantly reminded me to stay in the moment and to be grateful for even the tiniest things.
Celeste Headlee from Freeway Phantom joins us beyond the mic for the back half. You're a podcast raconteur.
Yeah.
How has this medium changed the way you examine media as a whole?
Podcasts remind me a lot of, I've been in public radio for a very long time, and in public radio, because we don't have ads, we can go longer. And that's one of the great things about podcasts. Like, you can do as many series. There's no set format. And I love the fact that in podcasting, the content shapes the format rather than the other way around. That's a beautiful thing. And it really has expanded the possibilities for storytelling.
It's time for one big question. With Celeste Headlee beyond the mic, with most of these young women's families fighting for justice failed back in the 70s, what would you consider appropriate justice for them now?
My suspicion at this point, 50 years later, is that this killer is deceased. But they can still get some measure of justice. They have so many questions about what happened to their girls that if they could get some answers, I mean, these deaths, this loss still really hurts them in a very present way. And I feel like somebody somewhere knows something. We do have iHeartMedia and Tenderfoot have both contributed to make a sizable reward if somebody wants to give a tip. And some of those answers might really help these families find some measure of closure.
Celeste, do you believe you can solve this crime, or has the killer been lost to time?
No, I think we absolutely could solve this. Somebody, at the time, there was so much mistrust between these Black communities of, lower socioeconomic status, Black communities. There was so much mistrust between them and law enforcement. I don't think people told law enforcement everything. Understandably so. Somebody knows something because it was a friend of a friend and they didn't want to get anybody in trouble. It was a family member. It was something they overheard at a barbecue or in a barbershop. Somebody knows something. And these absolutely could be solved if we could get people to talk.
Where can people give you more information on this crime?
So the easiest way, especially if you want to do it anonymously and possibly get that reward, is to send it straight to Tenderfoot TV. You can send your tips, anonymous tips, to tips@tenderfoot, all one word, .tv. tips@tenderfoot.tv.
And where can people find you online?
So the easiest thing is just to go to my website. It's all Celeste Headlee. Nobody else's name is Celeste Headlee that I can find. So everywhere you look for Celeste Headlee, you will find me. I still kind of use Twitter. It's hard to find a social media platform that's not problematic, but I'm still on there. And I do Instagram, though it's mainly pictures of my dog.
She loves making miniatures and homemade maple butter. She would read the mind of Alexandra Petrie if she could, and wants you to hear Freeway Phantom. Celeste Headlee, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
My pleasure, Sean. Thanks for having me.
And that, my friends, is a Beyond the Mic shortcut.